When you're talking about meeting the hero, how do you make your prospect the hero of what's going on? And to your point, I've got this problem in technology. What if I've got somebody with similar shoes like you, and what they did was they used our product and then and paint this big picture of how they could get to success. And again, that starts the conversation. So tell me more. I'm interested in that. So making it personal to the audience as much as you can, that's relevant to them, it helps them visualize themselves in that story.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Doug Thompson with us today, and I'm excited for the conversation. And you may have noticed I'm always excited about the conversations because they're always that good. So I'm excitable. It's okay. And Doug's going to carry on the excitable tradition. And as we always say, no one knows Doug better than Doug. So Doug, little backstory, bring us up to speed, and we'll get into some good stuff.
Well, I'd argue with a little bit. My wife probably knows me better than I know me, but that's only because we've been married over 40 years. But anyway, Doug Thompson, I am a storyteller, technology selling nerd, basically a techno nerd that is on a mission to help everybody tell better stories, get in touch with their own story. As you can see behind me, I'm a 2-time Ironman triathlon finisher. I got a brand new knee to show for all that's my hardware. I got it later. But, I'm here out Austin, Texas. I love to tell stories, love to help other people get in touch with stories. So that's me.
I love it. Now, storytelling, this is why this is going to be great for everyone listening. Be good at storytelling. But from a selling standpoint, from a communicating standpoint, this is the way to go. This is what works. What I love about it, Doug, is kind of high level, obviously, with me, though, is it's easy. It's easy because I'm telling a story. Like, how can you go wrong? You're telling a story. I don't have to follow bullet points. I just tell the story, and I can animate, and I can do all the great stuff. So, yeah, let's kind of tear into it. Let's just start how'd you actually get into, hey, I'm a good storyteller, let me go teach people storytelling?
Yeah, it was somebody else told me. So we were interviewing, this is back when I worked at Microsoft. I spent 20 years there, and we were interviewing for somebody for a position similar to mine. And on our team, after we interviewed like 8 people, I mean, they were really smart people. They were like, I'm sure they were smarter than I am in a lot of different ways. But what the manager said, pulled me aside, says, look, none of these people can relate to customers and tell a story like you can. I said, I apparently developed this habit over the years. I love to read. I love to communicate with people. I found that I think stories just work. I wasn't born with that, but it was something I was just sort of, drawn to. And it wasn't to that point in time I thought I did anything special. So after that, I sat down, I started thinking about it. I said, okay, how did I develop this, and how can I help others do it? Because, and when you're in technology, you meet a lot of very smart people, but they can't tell you what they do. They can't tell us. They're great at, like you said, the speeds and feeds. But to me, if I'm talking to a customer, if I'm talking to a potential customer, they don't really care about that anymore. And it's gotten more and more so. There was a time when speeds and feeds would sell itself, and that was easy. But as you sort of matured and the market changed and everything's SaaS and stuff, now you've got people that are buying that can probably barely turn on their computer, but they have a problem they need solved. So how can I tell them that, we can solve your problem, and here's the things we're going to do? And that's where story, again, it creates this emotional impact to you that you remember it. It makes you memorable and stuff. And so my mission now is I coach other people to do this, and working on workshops to how do you learn to use storytelling, and to your point, once you learn the basics and learn to do this and start what I call thinking in stories, they're all around you, and it becomes easy. I can't remember speeds and feeds. There was a pitch contest we had at a sales kickoff a couple of weeks ago, and you'd think the storyteller would win this. But they had this judging rubric where you had to hit these points in this order.
Right.
and you had 3 minutes, and I was horrible because I got all in my head. It wasn't the way that I normally do things, telling stories.
Yeah, I did that one. I did a pitch like that. It was called a fast pitch, kind of a knockoff from whatever, that Shark Tank. But you had 3 minutes, and you went a second over, you're disqualified. And I'm pitching a franchise in my gym, and I had to come up there, and we're all boot camp style training, man. I'm in blouse, boots, the whole thing, and the cover, and I like, bam, I hit it right to the second, but I did the story. I hit all the points. I'm like, even the keynote's like, dude, you won that. You won.
Wow.
There's no way you didn't win that. I'm like, okay. I didn't win it, Doug. I got like 4th place. Some girl, and here's the moral of the point of the story. She got to start talking about stories. I had brain cancer, and then I got this idea for these socks to fix these socks. And she went into this story, and there's a girl from my gym. We're all sitting in the back, right? And she listened, and she leaned back to me because I went before her, and she goes, she's winning. She goes, she's winning. I go, she's winning. And sure enough, she won. I'm like, oh, but her story just, I couldn't even compare. You know what I mean? You got all that. So she did that and won that competition, you know, so I'm totally with you. You know, I get it.
You bring up an interesting point, though, about, she had this cancer story. And, I find a lot of people block themselves from, they have this inner storyteller in it. We're all born with this capability. I mean, back in the caveman days, that's how we communicated, was telling stories. And what happens is they think I don't have this compelling story. To your point there, I've never had brain cancer. I've never fallen off of, recover from a horrible wreck and we sort of compare ourselves to, I'm just a normal person who's been very successful in what he's got, and I don't have a story to tell, but you do, and there's somebody out there it'll connect with, but don't get put back if somebody makes you in 4th place because you got a better story. You got a new knee.
You got a new knee. You got multiple Ironmans. What do you tell you don't have a story? What are you talking about? I'll juice it up for you. But yeah,
there you go.
That's exactly it. You're right. People don't understand everybody's got a story. I don't know, Jim, and I train people. Everybody's got a story. Okay. Good, bad, whatever it might be. One that's the best excuse story you've ever heard. I've had people give me more excuses than one story. I'm like, well, dang, well, none of that's valid to me, but that was a cool story. But it's like, that's what it is. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Now get to work.
Yeah, exactly. Get in your face and start pushing. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so take it from there. So I have found when I'm selling, I'm doing a workshop, everything else, I even may have the bullet points, but I wrap story around.
Mm-hmm.
I take that stuff and you have to put it into context. Is this storytelling? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I usually am. Okay. Is storytelling really just putting things in context?
That's a big part of it. And, when you think about stories, they all have a form, right? And there's the story arc. There's the traditional things that come with it. I've got my own spin on that. And, I've got these 8 steps I created to sort of tell a great story. And it started, you need to know something about your audience, because the best stories that land and stick, your audience can immediately see themselves in that story. They become the hero. They become that. So when you're talking about meeting the hero, how do you make your prospect the hero of what's going on? And to your point, I've got this problem in technology that, what if I've got somebody with similar shoes like you, and what they did was they used our product and then and paint this big picture of how they could get to success. And again, that starts the conversation. So tell me more. I'm interested in that. So making it personal to the audience as much as you can, that's relevant to them, it helps them visualize themselves in that story.
Yeah, I do that with, again, workshops. My thing is I tell my story. Okay, I lost everything, got this, had to let go of my whole crew, of 10 years, and had the last coffee with them and all that. I mean, you just get into this stuff, and because a lot of people, when I'm talking to business owners, I know I've written best-selling books about it. We're in the same place. I know exactly where they are now. So that's why the story is so effective, just to your point. And understanding your audience, I think, is, from a storytelling point, it's obvious. Okay, that really works. But really, it's anything. Anytime you're dealing with an audience, you have to know who they are. Okay. I can't go out with the $10 words talking to a 50-cent word crowd. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I'm just saying, I'm a 50-cent word guy. So you're talking the other stuff.
You're a high spender. I'm down about the quarter.
Yes, I can't help myself. I'm undisciplined. But yeah, it's really when you look at it, and we've all probably been to those places where I'll sit and listen to someone and go, do they even know who they're talking to? You can tell they have something that's so rote that they just get up and it's like a robot and they do this thing, I mean, the audience is irrelevant to them, and I always wonder, are they actually successful? Or every fourth audience, they get the right audience. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I think they hit upon the right audience, or they're doing what their sales management has told them to do. I call that tech-splaining. It's mansplaining with technology is that they're trying to explain, and I really don't care. I've got money I want to spend. I got a problem I got to solve. How can you do that? And I don't care about ones and zeros. Don't try to do it. Waste your time. You're going to lose me.
Yeah. I was teaching this yesterday morning, a seminar, a workshop I was doing, and it's same thing. I said, you've got to know their pain, their problem, right? Really well. And I have this little thing I use. So you go to the doctor's office, you got the pain chart with all the faces, the 1 through 10. The picture of the 10, that's scrunched up. That's your prospect. Then there's a padlock that's locked in the middle. Then there's the happy face with the sunshine and rainbows, and you got all that stuff, right? I said, you're only talking about the first and last thing. You're not talking about the center. The padlock is what they pay you for. They pay you for the key. Yes. That's the how. So we dig in the pain, do that. And then the outcome is the happy face. When people work with me, they did this, and their life looked like this, right? Story. Talk about what they with their family, spent this time on the beach, and they did this, and they could do all this now, and it was amazing. And you don't have to spend time in the how. That's the tech. The how. They don't care, right? Like I tell them, if I in the hospital, I've cut my arm half off. The pain's unbelievable. The doctor hands me 2 tablets. Say, take these, the pain will go away. I'm not going to ask for the insert to read about what is actually in the thing he just gave me. I'm popping that sucker and I'm going to feel better. Okay. I'm not asking any questions. So, you got to understand, you got to understand where you're at in that journey, right?
Yeah. And it is a journey. It is, it's the, and again, another mistake that a lot of people make, and maybe those people were just simply doing that, is they didn't inject any of themselves into the story that they had. As you were talking about the $10 word and the 50-cent word and stuff like that, if you tried to do a $10 word, if I tried to do a $10 word, I don't come across very well that way. I mean, it might as well be speaking a foreign language because that's not me. Right? And your secret sauce, I call that step 8, that's what really sells the story. It makes a okay story to be one that's memorable and great, because I've added my little flavor to what's going on. Mine's always going to have humor. It's going to have high and low parts. It's going to be sort of all over the place to do that. It's not going to be you're very scripted. And I've got a story. When I went to Microsoft, they had this training class. This was back in Windows Millennium. So this was many moons ago. And they were doing this road show. This is back when Microsoft sold to a lot of system builders. That's the mom and pop shops down the street that, built computers from scratch. They were big in that time frame, and we were running this little workshop. They had 10 trainers. We were technical trainers. I used to teach Microsoft products and trainings on the side, and they brought us in there saying, we need somebody to go do this roadshow. And we came up there, and there was 10 of us. There was one guy in there, and I call him the professor. He's got the tweed jacket and the elbow patches, all nice and dressed up and very smooth in his delivery. And I admire that style. And for whatever reason, again, we tend to get in our own way. I tried to emulate him the entire week. And as you can imagine, I was failing miserably because that is not me. I was, it's sort of like that pitch contest all over again. I was not doing what I do.
You didn't have the patches. You didn't have the patches.
I didn't have the patches. I'm sure that was it. I didn't have the patches. Well, I talked to my wife who, along the way, she's been one of my best coaches. I said, look, I'm failing. I don't belong here. You get to that imposter syndrome and when it's not right. And she says, well, what have you been doing? I told her, says, that's just stupid. That's not you. You can only be you. So I was, okay. Well, I went there. I went back the next day, unrehearsed, went through the whole pitch. This was our final pitch to get some things. And I left there. And the guy called me up, says, I waited for that person to show up all week. Where was this person all week? Because you were the best one there. And that was because, again, I tapped into my personality and stuff, and it made it relatable to people. And that's what it is. If you don't do that, you're really sort of shortchanging your success, because that's what people want. They want to connect with people. People still buy from people. And
Right.
if they can't have that connection, if you're cold and you're like a robot, well, then why do I need you? I can talk to Chat GPT and get the same information
Or more. You know,
or more.
something you mentioned when you're talking about imposter syndrome, and a lot of people know what that is today. It's kind of we'll call it a newer thing, right? Because you've got coaching and you have this industry now that has arisen, right?
Yes.
And that certainly can affect people. I mean, because you hit a really good point on that, the storytelling, making your thing, it's imposter syndrome is, hey, I don't feel like I'm qualified. I'm not good enough. There's other people who are better. Why would anyone pay me for what I know? It's just, it seems normal to me, right? They don't understand how to value themselves for the most part. And that really is a self-confidence issue, right? There's a lot of different aspects to that. But do you have a method in your 8 points and all that stuff where you're really helping people overcome that? Because you got to run into that a lot. I see it a lot.
Yeah, it's sort of in the secret sauce, the last thing there, in that, because I did part of my TED talk on that, and it's really that, from the brain science perspective, it's your subconscious trying to protect you from failure. We don't have a lot of dinosaurs to run from anymore, so we invent these things that it needs to protect us from. And I had some latent things. I went through some other coaching and stuff to unlock some of these things I didn't, things from the childhood, which sort of fed that negative self-talk, that the human brain's wired for negativity. It's a survival type thing. We sort of think in a negative type thing if left to our own desire. So as my life as a successful person and stuff, but not having these tragedies to overcome, it's easy to sort of put that, well, you're not special, right? You don't have anything to add. It requires some self-reflection. This is not something I can accomplish in the work, but I can say, here's some work and stuff that you can think about doing are you really that way? Like, I can't tell a story. Well, do you talk to your friends? How do you talk to your friends? And I actually done this exercise. Well, okay, here's this thing. Sell me this thing. Tell me a story about this thing. And it was very flat, then, okay, now you're talking to your friends and you're going to tell them about this. And you can see the light go off because they don't think about that. They're
Right.
engaged and they can have a conversation with their friends because they've done it 100 times, yet they don't realize, much like during the interview, they don't realize that they're telling stories.
Right.
It's when they put all this pressure and stuff on it. So it's a lot of self-reflection that you need to do to get sort of over that.
What's interesting in this podcast world? Okay, I've been a guest a couple hundred times. I've done a couple hundred episodes, right, as a host. But I'll see someone, they'll speak, honestly, like speak in front of a crowd on a panel. They're great. They're awesome. I want to ask them, hey, you want to be on my podcast? I think it'd be great. Oh, I have to get the nerve up for that. I don't think I can do that. I'm like, but you just spoke to like 50 people and like, you're just sitting here with these other people on the panel, right? One of 7. So you've got this, like the friend thing, right? It's like, there's other people. And I was like, shocked. Cause she's like a pro. She's awesome. Like, you'll be like, and I'm like, it's like a phone call,
Yeah.
So you get that once in a while. Now, if someone, does this regularly, that's not a problem. But a lot of people, this podcast thing is like you're a celebrity or something. Not that we aren't. Doug, you and I were quite, I tell my kids I'm an unknown celebrity. I tell them all the time, but I think they have this perception of themselves. That's that barrier. They just hit this barrier of like, and I've had people on my show who weren't afraid to come on my show that shouldn't be on a podcast. Just
I've had to wrangle a few
right?
of those too.
So it's funny how that is, but it really comes down to that. So it's very interesting. I know, the number one fear is public speaking, greater than death. They'd rather die. Okay. So I have to remind myself of that. I will call companies. Okay. Just give you an idea. Like, and they're a $10 million a year company. I say, hey man, I love what you're doing. You want to come on my podcast, talk about it? Just how you started, what you're doing, everything else. Nobody.
Yeah.
Come on. I'm like, really? I thought it would be like, who'd say no to that? Right? Coming on my podcast. So I had to laugh because you just, like, guys like you and I, we like tell stories and we talk and we do, this is like all day long. It's like easy, right? We roll up there, like you said, I go up unscripted all the time. I'll do a whole day seminar, like just walk in and teach for days, like and do whatever. But yeah, it's fascinating, the resistance.
And you're right. It's the fear of failure or fear of, making fun of. If I'm not making one or two mistakes during the whole thing, I can laugh at myself. I entertain myself all the time. Nobody's killed anybody because of that. That's I use that as I said, look, I'm not died. The worst can happen is somebody's going to have, but the audience, and here's another thing people forget is the audience is rooting for you. They don't, there's a couple sickos in the back that want you to fail, but for the most part, they want you to succeed. And
they want to be,
they don't take advantage of that.
Be entertained. They paid to be there probably. Like they have expectation, they do want you to do well. And I'll give you a quick example of, Andy Andrews. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
Like to hear that guy speak, you want a storyteller? Okay. That guy he's another universe. He's amazing. So he'd be in the room when he walks around. It was pretty he'll just ask someone randomly, like, well, what's your name? And then the guy will say, my name's Bob. Oh, that's my dad's name. And he'll go and he'll get back in the story and he'll talk and he'll walk across and goes, what's your name? And they'll say like Jeff. They go, oh, that's my dad's name. And he keeps doing that. Probably by the third person, people are like, what? Oh, they start getting you. But he has this ability to engage in and out with people inside the story. Someone who's just really mastered it. I don't put myself at that level by any means, but an incredible storyteller. And he can be very terse, he can be very deliberate and like on point. He doesn't need 2,000 pages, So talk about that a little bit because there's storytelling. I've had people on podcasts who, I'm trying to jump in somewhere. They kind of don't take a breath and you don't get to ask a question because they're just rolling, right? I call that going all professor on you. Someone comes on, they just ramble for an hour straight. I get 2 minutes out of an hour. Okay. Those don't get published, by the way, but talk about that a little bit.
It's not interesting.
Well, right. It's just like, really, it was, I'm not going to share the story, but it's pretty funny, but talk about that a little bit because brevity, there's storytelling, there's brevity mixed with storytelling, right? You're hitting points, and we're not going to get into the technique, like how do I pause here and this kind of stuff, but the deliverability in a time factor. Like, what do you just kind of give me your insights into like, hey, like 3 minutes is about perfect, 7 minutes, or it doesn't matter. Depends who you're talking to and what you're talking about. What's your experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're put in these situations like the TED Talk where I had 12 minutes. My first version of the script was 36 minutes.
Right. Been there.
And yeah, and I like to have texture. I like, when I'm like a J.K. Rowling when I'm setting the background and the theme and all this other stuff that is nice, but it's not really relevant to what you're trying to do. So I'm learning to pare these things down to what's impactful. But you want your story, depending on the time frame. You want it to flow with this. There's the arc, there's a struggle, there's these other things, but it can't be a constant, just all out type thing. Your story, you have to give the audience time to sort of recover, right? So there's going to be those times where you sort of bring it down a little bit and you want them to think about it and reflect a little bit. And then you bring them back up again and then you go down. I mean, it is that if you watch a good movie, they do the same thing, right? You go through this whole thing because we have to have time to digest it to stay engaged. But to your point, there's a lot of things you can leave out of a story that aren't necessarily important, doesn't really help move the story along or doesn't help set up something else that's down the road. But if you keep your audience in mind, it's so much easier to craft that story from their point of view. If I was them, what would I want to listen to? What would make an impact on me? And my goal in all my talks is to just have one person change the way that they're doing it. Just one. I mean, if the more, that's great. But if I can get just one, then from the ripple effect, I've created something else because I'm trying to impart change on them. After my TED Talk, I was not happy with that because I'd played this track in my head of doing it this way, and it didn't come out. It didn't come out that way. And I said, look, but this one kid came up after it was over and he had this page of notes and he had the graph and, hey, I need to ask a clarifying. I'd impacted that one person and it changed my entire, because we're our own worst critic. And it really wasn't that bad, but it was like, that's my goal. Impact one person, find it somewhere that I want to go ahead and change that. But again, depending on the environment, you have to shorten the story. You can play a little bit longer, but always try to cover like 3 points, no more than 3 points. And you sort of set it up. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Not necessarily here's what I'm going to tell you, but that whole frame. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you what I told you. And so you just want to create that circle of, here's my goal when I'm starting. We're going to cover these three things. The middle there where you're telling them the three things, that's where you really want to breathe. Give them some pacing and some time. And at the end of it, you're sort of wrapping it all up together. Here's where we're at. And that's a good skill set to learn that I don't think we do. They try to cover too many things. Right? Here's 70. I've got these 75 bullet points I've got to cover. No, that's, I can't do that. What's the three things that I've got to do? And sometimes you can break those down to little sub-subjects, but that's just frame it to the time that you have allotted and then work backwards what the customer needs to hear. What's the most important things? If you have only one thing that they can remember, you got 5 minutes. What's that one thing that they need to take away from it? And that's where you sort of do that.
Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned is really important too, is that end, kind of the end, or if you want to call it closing the loop or whatever it is. What I learned in like doing webinars and stuff too is it's called the stack, right? So you're saying you're going to get this, this, and this, that reminding, covering the last three things, because people only remember the last thing they hear. So if I told them 18 different things they're going to get, and I only said the first thing of the 18 one time and never said it again, all they're going to remember is number 18, and that's why I'm asking for $2,000. You got to keep telling them, let's keep reviewing all this stuff. So at the end, with a 3-point thing, it's even easier. You got to hit those points all together. That's a really good takeaway. You just, reminded me of, like, they're going to walk away with the last thing they hear.
Yeah. I call that sticking the landing. That's step number 7. And I see too many people miss that opportunity, like you said, because they don't close that loop and stuff on it. I was guilty of that one time too, and I look back and say, man, I just totally blew that because I didn't have that. It was early on, but that's the important thing. If they remember the first 2 minutes, so you have about 2 minutes to get their buy-in. That time frame is actually shortening. Why am I listening to you? So you have to have sort of a hook or something. How do you do that? And at the end of it, if you leave them sort of unsatisfied or unfulfilled or confused, to your point, then the time before that's all wasted because you've lost that opportunity.
Yeah, it's really important. I go, and not that we're talking to a room of professional speakers here, but everyone's got to present. Everyone's got to sell, right? If you're a salesperson, these techniques are critical. It's the same thing. If you're selling them 2 or 3 things or a bundle or whatever it is, like you have to remind them of everything they're getting at the end. It's the same principle, right? So this skill set to me, Doug, and why I love having you on is because people just don't think of it in these terms. We're always selling. Every human being is selling something every day in some capacity.
Pink wrote a book about that, To Sell as Human, which is a great book to read.
Yep. And you think about it, if you're married, you're selling. You're selling for one thing or another. It's like your life is all sales. So you've been married 40 years. I've been married 25. There's a whole lot of selling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard for them to put that into perspective. Like sales to everyone is dirty or it's hard or it's like, it's annoying or they have a very different mindset about what they're actually, and that's why they're not good at it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like they're believing their own. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then they get that wrong mindset of here's my number, right? So you have selling that's not a number. You're trying to convince somebody your algorithm's better than theirs or something like that amongst your peers. Why should I hire you? You're selling yourself. That's the very first sales job you've got is an interview. I'm selling myself. But the other part of that is if you're focused really only on the number, then your motivation's off. I've gone through my career, always made the number, exceeded the number. And it's been because I focused on solving problems, right? Making that connection with the customer and solving the problems. Because then the number takes care of itself if I'm executing on that part of it. And I don't come across as slimy. I don't sell people things they don't need, right? So to me, that would be the worst thing is selling somebody something that they don't need. And sometimes I have to say, look, but be honest, I can't sell you everything that we have. You're not ready. This is a journey. Right. You're going to have to start here small. Right. And go. It's not that you don't need that sometime in the future, but right now you've got these 3 problems that I can definitely help you take care of. But if we don't get those, this other problem is, it doesn't really matter. It's like worrying about where I'm going to park my Ferrari when I don't have one. Right. It's like, let's focus on what we've got. Let's get the car we've got working.
Yeah. It's always that To me, it's always that we call benevolent servant. You're here to serve. Sales to me is serving. Okay, so I'm like you. I want to sell you what you need. Okay, like you said, there's 5 things here, but you're not ready for number 5 because you don't have that. So we need 1, 2, and 3 or whatever. So I'm totally with you on that, and it's really engaging them in that, because there's another thing that, whether you want to call it honesty, integrity, authenticity in the sale when you're conversing with them, because you tell them I have all this, but you're really not ready for this. So we're not going to be concerned with those. Like a plain stuff, and you like shove them off the table, like, oh, he's actually taking stuff away. He's going to sell me less. They don't have that guys coming, to show up and throw up, and just sell you everything and all that stuff, so you got to really dial in. And I think for me, I've used the storytelling portion to combine it with discovery and questions, right? When I've mixed the two together, I really because I get them telling their story. If you get them telling their story, why this is a challenge, tell me more, and get into it, you see them without being on stage, so to speak, I'm air quoting, but they start sharing their story, right? Now you're conversing in stories. You know how you mimic body language? If their arms are crossed, your arms are crossed, they're leaning back, you lean back, and they're walking, you walk, that whole thing. Same thing. If you start with the story and then they start with you bring them into a story, what are they doing? They're mimicking you. You're leading. Right. So now I'm leading with this, pulling their story out. They're going to connect that way. They're going to feel that connection, right? We're similar. So it's a really good, and there's an understanding there and everything else. So I might be going off the rails with this, but I just think it's
all part. A good storyteller connects with people. Okay. And that's part of it is people always want to know what's in it for them. Even though they won't say that, there's always that interest. That's why you got I'm going to watch you for 2 minutes, and if you don't hook me, then I'm on the phone looking at, FaceTime or whatever, right? So being that, but it's always about connection with people. That's why I podcast too, because you're connecting with whoever you're talking to, and it comes across as a conversation. It comes across as human, and Lord knows we need a lot of humanity anymore. When and I'll go back to school. We've done technology has, I think, killed conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Take the podcast stuff out of it, but they can text like madmen and women. They can Snapchat, do whatever, but they can't, tell me, like, for example, I was a mentor out at University of Texas master's program for IT management, and we were having mock interviews as part of the exercises, and I'm looking at their resume, and I have to pull out the dictionary to ask, okay, every third word, what the hell does this mean? I didn't know what it was. So they're very intelligent. And if you watch them talk amongst each other, like data science, you watch them, it's a weird conversation that goes on, but it's a very nerdy conversation. But then you ask them, okay, look, I could hire anybody here. Why should I hire you? They can't tell me. They can't tell me the story or the value that they have. And it's because they never had to do that. Everything's a text or short. When I grew up, we had one phone, and we were fortunate enough to have a 30-foot cord that I could go to another room, so my parents didn't listen to me talking to all my friends and girls and stuff. So, but you had to have a conversation, and they don't have that anymore because technology makes it too easy.
Yeah, I think another part of that too, Doug, is they have a lack of experience. And I don't mean in the job. I mean in life. Yeah. They're so honed into a device and games and stuff like that they don't really, you and I could tell stories, okay, just from, the trees we fell out of and the mountains we rolled down and almost drowned on this and the raft I built and I'm putting, the whole thing, right? I've done all this stuff, and that's all part of the stories, right? And we're able to pull from those experiences, add them to our stories. And I really like when you say, like, well, yeah, tell me why we should hire you. It's a great response question. It can depend on their position, what they're going to do. Yeah. But it's really a fascinating thing when you look at it from that perspective, from conversation, because they can't look you in the eye. There's a lot of, I don't know if the word's etiquette, but there's formality to like conversation, right? There's a method to conversation. And on my podcasts, like you and I, so everyone knows, nothing is scripted. I give you no questions. You give me no questions. We jump on, we have this conversation. I do this with every single interview. Now, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and the ones that are the worst are Question number 1, I say a really good answer. Well, thank you for that. Question number 2, well, thank you for that. I'm like, are you kidding me? I could have sent you a video.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's them. And then there flashes stuff behind them all about them. You know what I mean? So very different thing. But that style doesn't resonate with me. You know, I'll do it. I'll get through it.
Some people it does.
Yeah. And that's good. Their audience, hopefully I serve them well. Okay. In my 12 and a half minutes of answering questions or whatever it was. But there's no fun in that. Okay. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do a show like that. This is what I do. And I've done hundreds and I love it because there's no authenticity to this.
It's you're using improv skills. I mean, improv, everybody should take at least one improv class because it teaches you to listen. First of all, listen to who your conversation partner or stuff, listen to what they're talking about. And then always do the yes and, right? Always try to build upon that. Now, there's times you're going to have a disagreement and stuff, and that's okay. But it's not a yes, but it's, hey, have you thought about this? You know, here's another point of view, but it's a conversation. It allows that you don't close the door on anybody. You come up with some interesting discoveries along the way too, as you've sort of, that's a great, you know, I like that. Let's drill down in that a little bit more to find out what's going on, because otherwise you just gloss over it. Now, here's number 13. Here's my answer number 13, which is not good. And I get energy back from these conversations. So the conversations I had where I've been on there and they give me these, I'm just, you know, it's like, I get nothing, but I come back from this and I'm energized. I've got a totally new frame. It recharges me to have these conversations, much like when I'm talking to a customer and stuff and I see they get it. You see that light bulb go off in their head where we've made that connection. I said, and that's, again, when I'm on stage, the same thing. That's what you're looking for, is that connection. Because at that point in time, you got them. That's right. Not you got them, but you make that connection and something good should come out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned improv and people doing it. So I use this example a lot. I haven't used the improv part, so this is first. This is the first time. You're familiar with Dollar Shave Club? Or a couple of bald guys that probably have. Okay, well, he started, right? He started with one video on Facebook, and it like blew up. 4 years later, he sells Dollar Shave Club for $1 billion to Lever, okay, in 4 years. But my point to the improv is that's what he had done before. He did a lot of improv stuff, and he just created this kind of almost like a homemade video that launched him into, I mean, really, so that skill that he attained for doing it because he liked to do it, you know, carried that over in the business world. And, well, I can say it was worth $1 billion for him. So that's a pretty good payoff for doing a few improv classes, you know. But you're right, you know, that time in improv, in theater, in anything, right? Anytime you have to get up and perform, I use that term loosely, but whatever that is, it's really, really helpful. My daughter sings, plays piano, stuff like that. Some of my sons, and they, from a young age, they liked, we got them into it, right? Hey, go take singing lessons, go do that. Now, she doesn't like me to come to recitals. She's really good. You know, I get to see her sing in church every Sunday. She does that. But, you know, there's that thing where they still have that self-consciousness, but they do it. You know, and they've done it for years, and it's just a skill that transfers to everything you do in life. That's why I think it's so good.
It definitely does, yeah.
It's important to understand that if you're in a kid raising stage, mine are all upper teens and early 20s now, 6 of them, but that exposure to all that stuff, had them in plays, had them singing, had them doing this different stuff, you can see the benefit when they interact with other people. Friends, for jobs. I mean, they get hired, they're able to do things. So there's a lot of upside to doing that kind of stuff. And I'll just say this as a parent, you need to make them do it.
Yeah.
Because it'll pay off.
They won't like to.
Yeah. But
my grandkids are about the same age as your kids. So I had a couple of daughters. I've been through that already. Yeah, but it's you.
I just have a saying. I always tell them, you can thank me later. That's my favorite saying.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to do this now, and you'll hate me, and you can thank me later. Okay, it'll be okay.
It's funny. My oldest daughter, when she had her first child, we used to get these, I called them durability calls. Well, she's falling off. She doesn't, you know, it was like, and this would happen every day. You know, is she bleeding? You know, the same answers come out. No, it's fine. By the time the 6th child came out, we had to like call to make sure the 6th child was still alive.
They just stopped caring.
No, it's just you learn as you go through these trials and stuff that, there's lessons everywhere, and the risk that we perceive is always a lot greater than the reality of the situation.
That's right. That's right.
The biggest risk, and I run this with customers sometimes, is they don't want to change. Change is hard. And improv, you're constantly exercising that change muscle, so it becomes a lot easier to do. But change is hard, but it's necessary if you don't want to go extinct, basically. And in the case there, our friend would say, look, I'm really good at telling this story with the shaving stuff. That's perfect. He was being himself. He put that into the story. There was a problem that needed to be solved. He identified that. We could all relate to that. And then he went on and was very successful of it. And then he went on to do whatever the next thing is. That's the way these things work, is you find that one problem that needs to be solved, or problems, right? It
Right.
depends. And then how are you uniquely positioned to do that? Then you convey that story. Here's how this happens. I'm the connector. I'm like I just simply tell the story to connect the dots, because I have that advantage. Now, could I go implement this stuff? Oh, hell no. It's too technical for me to implement it all. I know how it works. I know the business problems it solves, and I marry those things together, which is somewhat of it's a rare skill set to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think what I teach a lot of people too, as I talk, and even what their business is, the how is not important. Like I said earlier, it's the beginning, the pain, where they're at. No one cares what you know. No one cares how much you know to know how much you care. And then there's the outcome. When you do, that's what's selling. The how doesn't sell. I may know the how, okay? And I may have 10 other people who know the how, who know it better than I do. So like you, I have a high level of it, but my job isn't to teach you. My job is to get you in the program so the teachers can do the work, right? That's the principle. And people, a lot of times, and it's part of the imposter syndrome too, they feel like they have to know everything. They have to have, 3 PhDs and this and this and this to be able to talk with authority, and you don't. It's the old Henry Ford thing, right? They want to lock him up for it. You don't know how to do it. He's like, yeah, here, let me just push this button and call the tire guy. Let me call the guy who makes the lights. He'll tell you how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I run a company.
Yeah.
I just came up with an assembly line idea, and here I am, So it's that kind of thing, that a lot of people get a little bit confused on. I think that's what holds them back a lot in those things. They haven't thought out, like, I'm going to tell a story. I'm selling a product, or I need to get someone in the program. Like, I'm the gate. Okay. I'm like the gate. I want to bring them through the gate, and then Disneyland's over there. Okay. I didn't build the rides. I don't make the rides. I don't make the food. I just get you in the gate so you can enjoy the expertise that's inside. Right. So when you can separate that, when you can and understand your position, it takes a lot of pressure off you. Especially in the imposter thing, so it's good. That's good stuff.
I always like the Venn. There's a Venn diagram out that's got sort of here's what other people know, here's what they think you need, and really the intersection is very small. What you really need to know is not as big as what you think. And I'll get in a room, and sometimes you'll get these guys that have the stump the chump type thing, and I say, look, you got a lot more experience of this than I do. I'm going to defer to you on that, but I know we can solve that problem. And here's sort of a couple of things to do it. I'm not here to have that. It does me no good. One, because I know I'll probably lose in the long run on that. But it doesn't make a good story if you're sitting there sort of tilting at windmills.
Right.
Or a little bit.
Yeah. We homeschooled our kids, all 6 kids, all the way through. Right. So people are like, oh, I can never do that. I go, you only got to be 1 week smarter than them. I go, you just need to be a week smarter. That's all I did. I'm 1 week ahead of them. Okay. I'm no genius. I barely got out of high school. Okay. But I homeschool my kids, and they're in the Marine Corps now and college, whatever. It's you just got to be a 1 week smarter. You could be a day if you really want to push the edge, but take heart. I tell you, you can do this.
Yeah.
It's really not that difficult, and I can say that because I have my wife who did all the teaching, but I did art and PE to be transparent.
There you go, yeah.
Okay. But they're good artists, and they're great physically fit.
You bring up this, again, getting back to the part where I can't do something, which is a mindset thing. I was working with my grandson the other day, one of my grandsons the other day, on his Lego kid that came up, and he has a real confidence problem about doing things. And we were going on, and this long plastic piece is part of an X-Wing fighter that it was necessary got dropped, and one of the French bulldogs decided to gnaw on it a little bit. So it made it rough edges and stuff. And he says, I can't do it. And I said, let's work through this. And, I using my years of experience, okay, I'll soften this edge here. I'll do this, use a little spit to agree. And we got it all together. And I said, start with, and too many people don't have this, is start with, how can I make this work rather than I can't? If you start with that positive outlook that how can I make this work? You go through the discovery of doing these things, but you haven't put that block. Because if you say you can't, you're right. Like Henry Ford, if you say you can or can't, you're right.
That's right.
And too many people get stuck in this. I can't do that. I can't talk. I can't do this. Well, you got to change that frame of mind, or you're right. You can't do that.
The thing I do with my kids when I ask them something, I don't know. I go, well, if you did know, what would you say? And they look at me, and then they tell me the answer. It's not, I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would it be? And then they just tell you. It's just that kind of stuff you learn. Because I'm like you, big on there's no I can't. I tell my kids excuses are the most profitless thing to manufacture. Okay? Excuses are the nails that built the house of failure. Okay? I got a quote for every situation.
I guess.
Like, we just don't accept it. I just don't accept the excuse thing as, we do desire plus action minus excuses times competition equals success or results, right? I made that little equation for them. I put it on shirts and everything else. I go, this is what we think. Desire, that's on your pillow. You're dreaming, right? You want to do something. No good without the action. So you got to add the A for action. Then we got to subtract excuses. No excuses, right? And then we got to compete. Competition is a big term, right? It can be against yourself, against something else, against the problem, competing against the problem to solve the problem. And that's where you get results. Once you go through those steps, you're going to have your results. And we put it on shirts and stuff. We're runners, all this kind of stuff. Things said like, we outwork your talent every day. That's the kind that was mine. I don't care if you're talented or not. We work hard. That's how we get things done. We'll outwork the talented people. Okay. So we build a mindset. Yeah, my kids probably, they're probably glad they're older and getting out of the house now, so don't they hear that stuff anymore, but they're stuck with it.
Yeah.
They'll be telling their kids.
It carries with them.
That's right.
You look at, like, I know Pete Rose made some bad decisions later in life, but there's nobody out there that made more out of less skill or talent, or out of less talent than him just hustling and getting and doing it all the time. Perfect example of that. Or like in an Ironman, I was always competing against myself. And boy, you want to talk about inner demon coming up talking to you. Hey, you're an old fat guy. You can't do, you shouldn't be doing this. Right. And that's the mental game. The physical part was easy. You think exercising 16 hours a day is hard. No, that's getting the mind to shut up long enough for you to get through it.
Man, that is so right, Doug. So right. It's speaking of excuses, so I'm rolling in my car and I'm coming down to a stoplight. I'm like, it's going yellow. I'm going to go. And as I accelerate, the police officer's sitting at the other light, right, ready to go in the truck. I'm like, and I had to blow through. So I see him take the corner and he speeds up, and he comes up next to me in the turn lane, rolls down the window. I roll down mine. He goes, can we stop at the red lights next time? And this way, as I went, yeah, I was. And he just nodded his head. I went, yes. I wanted to tell him, like, why? And he was not interested in hearing why. He's just like, I just stop, So it's pretty funny. They happened to go down. It's like, yeah, he got me. I almost started to, yep, yes. Okay, it's good.
Yeah.
And I
started with that adding excuses to your
exactly. Exactly. So, we're always in the state of learning, right? Sometimes we just, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's really good. It's been such an interesting conversation because I don't think people talk about this enough. You're kind of on your circuit. This is what you do, right? You do this for a living. I utilize some of these things in what I do in business coaching and advising and everything. I love hitting these points though. Doug, I think you've really brought a lot to the conversation here for practical application, right? Because you'll hear storytelling or you hear, Donald Miller's story brand and do this, which you want to know something really funny? I'm going to throw him under the bus. I don't care. Okay. Read the book Story Brand, right? If you've read it, I'm sure, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Then I watched one of his videos. Then I watched another video. I'm like, this man should not be doing videos. Oh my gosh, he's the worst. Dude,
not his skill set.
Oh my gosh, so like you wrote a book on story brands.
Yeah.
It's the driest, most horrible. I'm like, oh, someone needs to tell him. I don't know the man, but I'm telling you, like, because, when you read a book, you're reading in your own mind.
Yeah.
You have your own voices.
Yeah, you're the narrator.
Right. And I'm doing it. It was great. I'm like, oh, this is good. But boy, after about the second or third video, I haven't watched one in years. I'm like, I can't do it. Okay. So we got to know our limits, I guess. You got to know how you're applying things. And to your point, I think we need, and we could talk about this real quick too, that feedback. Like, talk about getting the feedback. So I get up and I'm going to do my story, or I'm going to do my presentation, or I'm going to take my 3 minutes on a pitch or whatever it is. How do you deliver the feedback? You know what I mean? I don't mean like, hey, you need to turn this left more and this kind of stuff, but like in general, it's like A, B, C, like if you're grading them, because I think without feedback, you have nothing. You have no way to improve without real feedback.
Yeah. And that's a lot of it depends on the person, how they receive that relationship with them. So, but I try to focus. Here's the things you did very well. I always like to have that on there. Here's the things and you could, and this is why it impacted me. This is why this was good. And I lost you here, right? There was a disconnect here. What were you thinking? What were you trying to do? Trying to get them to get in their own head to sort of think what their frame of mind was with that one. This is, have you thought about, I try to give them alternatives just to think about things. Again, it's looking for places where they've disconnected. And I do this, people doing presentations and stuff here, work and stuff. And it's like, our demo, watching doing a demo. And I said, these guys were very good executing the technical parts of the demo, but they failed to connect it with a story. I said, you're missing an opportunity here by how more. Picture yourself as the audience. How it would have felt if I've got this problem. Did what you just showed solve my problem? Well, and a lot of times that they're nerds, which a lot of them, yeah, it did. How? Where's the thing where it solves my, because I didn't hear you say that. You may have shown them, but you got to have a conversation. You got to tell them what tell them what you told them. Here's how this is doing that. And, feedback is always, but you're right. You need to know what went on. What could I do better next time? I always, when I'm doing a presentation, I say, guys, you were here. What could I do better next time? And it's hopefully bringing just things that they're not aware of, that they don't think about, just trying to raise them to the surface as much. Not that their intent was bad. I always try to stay away from the intent, right. But try to say, what were you thinking at that time? Could you think about it a little bit differently, which might make that more impactful? Right. And then I think that lights up some stuff and help coaches. That for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we have video, we have audio, right? We can review that.
Well, I hate watching myself.
Well,
I hate watching myself.
Do, yes. Yeah. The same reason we call ourselves fat is we're running for 15 hours, right? Because, fat people do that all the time. They run 10 miles, 20 miles, but we don't want to see that. I'm with you on that. I have a window. I hit the heavy bag multiple times a week, and I rock that thing, and there's a big, huge window overlooks the river, but it was dark in the morning, so I'm there early, and I got to face that reflection all day, so I hit that bag really hard. Because I'm thinking, listen, Tubby, okay, you got to work. But one of the things I've noticed and what I've done with podcasting, people are like, oh, I hate to hear my own voice. They want to see themselves, everything else. And I tell people, if they're just getting into podcasting or they're guesting, I'm like, you have to listen to your appearances. Mm-hmm. They go, do you still listen to yours? I go, every one of them. Like this show, I'll listen to again. Okay, I've listened to every single one I've been on or I host, because I go, like, sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't throw my brother under the bus like that. Maybe I won't say that next time. So you may hear one of these once, right? So you kind of learn, or then like, oh, that didn't come out so well, right? Like I didn't answer that one because, again, I'm very conversational, so I'm still learning. And then I also learn timing. Okay, they tell me we got 30 minutes. Cool. I have to tailor my answers to fit in a 30-minute period. Now, again, I don't know the questions, but I can't draw it out. I can shorten my stories. I can do that kind of stuff. So it's very good. And what I found, Doug, and you may do this too as you host and been guests, the technology now can tell how much each speaker spoke, the percentage. Yeah. Someone's like, hey, I like to be like 60-40, 60% the guest, 40% me. But I started looking at all my analytics. The best ones are like 50-50, 49-51. They're within a few percent of sharing the conversation like we're doing. And I'm like, ooh, there's something to that, but you can't plan that. That is,
No.
you get two people who are really, they've got, whether it's experience, whatever, but able to engage and go back and just volley back and forth. Those are like the best ones. I love them. I love having the stats now to see that. So those are tools that I use to help me be a little bit better. How does it look? What's the sound like? Right. All the things. So there's plenty of tools for that stuff. But yeah, this has been a ton of stuff. I mean, I think.
Oh yeah.
Right. Do we bring a lot of stuff to the conversation?
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of funny because podcasting, I did radio. I was a morning sports guy at a radio station back in my 30s. This is back where you had reel-to-reel tape and you had this.
Right.
I wish I'd had this technology then because it would have shortened my nights a lot when I was trying to. And I did color commentary at some of the high school football games, and so that was always fun. And it was sort of I didn't think about it for a long time. That was a period of my life where I did it as a side gig. And then we started doing this, and so I said, this is just like the radio days back in there.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's come back full circle, except you don't have the station manager breathing down your neck.
Well, I'll tell you, I did my first podcast, well, actually in like 2013, but I did a real one like 2020. And the difference in the technology and the ease and the advancement is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's effortless. Okay. I'm complaining because something takes like 5 minutes now. When it used to be like hire someone to do it. It was so bad, so it's really good. But yeah, I think that whole feedback loop is really, really critical. And I like to kind of wrap up with that because if you're not getting that, it's like anything, and it's the uncomfortable part of growing. Like you said, it's change. That's where the growth comes from. Being uncomfortable, making the change in whatever you're doing. In sport, same thing. If we're doing athletics, we're doing workouts, I'm pushing one more round, right? One more round on the rope, throw a few more punches, whatever that is, run a few more miles, climb another hill, that kind of thing. It's the same thing, I think, when you're storytelling, presenting, all that kind of stuff. You gotta put yourself out there. You got to allow feedback and coaching to come in. You kind of
or like I said, a lot of it's self-reflection too, because about the sixth time I tell a story, I finally got it to where I want it. And it doesn't vary a lot more from that. I mean, there'll be some little bit, but I've got the flow and I've got the other things. And it's about the sixth time that I've done it that I get to that point. And you learn like, okay, this joke didn't land. And it's sort of funny because when you're using humor, what lands one day may not land the next day at all.
That's right.
And you can't let that sort of break you. Don't get dissuaded because something you knew would work didn't, because just sometimes it doesn't. And you just go on and you go from there.
You know what else I learned was like, you're telling the same story, right? You're telling the story, like you said, 6 times, 8 times. I said, I'm like, people, really? I got to do this again? I got to tell the story again? Are people tired of the story? And then you realize, I'm telling you, I struggle with that. Like, I better change it up. I better do something different. And then I finally had to come to realization, most people haven't heard me. Who do you really think you are?
Exactly.
It's a big world out there.
Exactly.
And it's
Joe Rogan, everybody's heard you?
Exactly. And even him, they haven't heard him. Okay. So it's like, you have to understand that you're delivering a message, right? And the message has to go to this people and that people and this tribe and this person. And you got to keep sending the message. We talked earlier about the verbal storytelling would be history, and that'd be carried on verbally before there was even a written language, right? So that's how that was done. So I really, because I had friends who were big speakers, and I'm like, okay, I've heard that like 19 times now, but I'm listening to them at all different things, right? But they've mastered it. They can deliver it. And you have to give yourself that permission to understand these people haven't heard this.
Yeah.
Even if they've heard it, they didn't hear it, right? You come the second time, they're still picking up stuff, right?
Well, that and sometimes they've heard an iteration of it. Somebody else told them that it didn't quite land with them until you told it. It's all about timing of that. Is that person ready to receive that story at that time? Because other times, if it may not be relevant, you just tune it out. Again, repetition is key. And, like I said, not everybody, I don't have the ego to think everybody on this planet has heard me, or heck, even half the people in my block have heard me tell that story.
Right. That's, same thing. I'm like, I just had to go, okay, just mellow out, just perfect it, just keep going, get better, and then get the feedback and make it better. And that process it's something that can carry over into other things you do, right? Understand that feedback coaching, because I tell people my first 20 years of business, no help was allowed. I did not permit anyone to tell me what to do or how to do it. I was a very high level of stupid. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had wonderful, amazing billionaires tell me what to do. And what do they know? You know who I am? I build
$1
water
billion.
features.
I'm going to have I'm going to have more than
I
that.
move rocks for a living. They call me Fred Flintstone. That's what I do, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, well, what do you know? So, but that feedback, always welcome that constructive, you know, whatever, if you want to call it, you know, constructive criticism, they call it, or just to critiques, be open to critique, because people will help you and they won't be brutal. Usually they won't always tell you everything you should hear. But if you're getting something, it's good, right? So that's awesome. That's awesome. Any final thoughts, Doug, on the whole storytelling, everything we've talked about today?
The key theme is, you can tell stories. We're wired for it. And that inner bully is going to lie to you all the time. So I've learned to recognize when I've given it a name. His name's Simon. He has an English accent, wears T-shirts a lot. But he's a bully. And I now realize when he's coming up, because I've done that sort of self-work and reflection, that I can then, my favorite is, okay, where's your receipts? Where's your receipts that I can't do that? Right. And it's amazing how fast it'll shut up, because there is nothing. Other than I can't run now because I have a new knee. I told the orthopedist I wouldn't run, but that's the whole other. That doesn't mean I can't go to the gym and work out and do some other things.
That's right.
But just the running day's over. But don't listen to that inner bully. Find that out and get your own story right first. Then you'll find this other stuff is much easier to do once you sort of get your own story straight.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is, work on your own, because you got one. You have one. And if you spend the time in the self-reflection and really look into your past, whether you're 25 or 85, all that stuff is there for you, and you can turn it into a story. Take those elements and create it, put it all together. It's pretty amazing. This has been awesome. Doug, how do people follow you, get in touch with you? You got anything you want to share with the audience or whatever that is? Now is the time.
I'm most active on LinkedIn, the Doug Thompson. I'm basically the Doug Thompson everywhere, because anybody can be a Doug Thompson. I want to be the Doug Thompson.
You are the
to do that. But also, I'm working on a course, Epic Storytelling, that sort of ties in. Hey, look, you've got the framework of a story. These are the special things that so you can sort of it's an emotional, it's powerful, it's impactful, inspiring, and it's connective. And so, how do you add that? This is the secret sauce. How do you add your secret sauce to the basic story structure? And I'm working on that to sort of share, and so that should be coming soon.
Awesome.
TheDougThompson.com. I'm there.
That was available.
Mostly on LinkedIn.
That was available. When'd you get that?
Years ago. I got it years ago. Yeah, I was listening to a story and somebody said I'm the something. I said I got to get that. So I went out as soon as I could register the domain. I've had it forever.
I love it.
Simply because I could. It's just it's just fun. Something funny to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. We all should be the. I like that. Not the.
It's just something to aspire to. The is hard. A is easy.
That's right. It's not pronounced the. It's the. It's very different than the. Right? It's very important. So that's awesome. Well, Doug, thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome hour, and I know people took away a ton of stuff, and I hope they put it into practice. Take action. Do it. Get that feedback. Record yourself, do whatever you got to do, but get great at it. It's going to help you in every aspect of your life. So do it, and we will see you on the next STS podcast. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Do it now.